want to talk about my old friend Dave and what it's like hanging out with somebody who's 7 feet tall. I met Dave in 1975. He came to work at Steg's Products, where I was working as a Teamster truck driver. Dave started working cash and carry up on the front, and that was actually my old job. He didn't stay at the company that long though. He lived right next door, and I was visiting him one time. He had a friend over, one of his old high school buddies, and he held the guy underwater for a really long time. That's when I decided I don't want to get to be close friends with Dave. But what we did have in common though were the movies. About 3 days a week, we would meet at the UA Cinema Marina Del Rey and see $1 movies. Dave would say, well, there's another one, let's just get it out of the way. We would see every Joan Collins, Bruce Dern, Charles Bronson movie that came out. Many times in the lobby, some young punk would come up to him and say, hey man, you got a cigarette? And Dave would give him a cigarette. And he'd say, how's the weather up there? Or how tall are you? And Dave would always answer the question politely. Later I'd say, Dave, why are you so nice to these guys? When they say, how tall are you? Pick them up. Say, I'm this tall. He wasn't a basketball player like most people thought. Instead, he was a golfer. He had bad feet. He couldn't play basketball. He had operations on his feet. But he played in golf tournaments. He was an excellent golfer. He also caddied at Rancho Park in West Los Angeles and Alondra Park, also in Torrance. He asked me to video record his golf swing. I had a Super 8 movie camera. So when I got the film back, he studied it one time. I guess he thought his golf swing was perfect and didn't need any improvement. We went up to Yosemite in Dave's Chevrolet Impala. He drove the longest Chevy Impala that they made. I think it was a 1971 Impala convertible. That trip to Yosemite was just remarkable. It was my first time up there. I remember sitting in the convertible, looking at the blue jays all around us, staring up at those enormous cliffs. It was just unbelievable. He made jokes about Half Dome. He called it Half House. Sometimes around the hiking trails we'd see somebody and he'd say, there's the other half of Half House. Or he'd laugh about their unshaven legs. He got a real kick out of all the women on the hiking trail with hairy legs. Very funny. On that Yosemite trip, I came down with the flu. It hit me really hard. We stopped at Smuggler's Inn on the way back. It's a steakhouse where they've got a buffet. And he made a bet with me that I wouldn't be able to finish my meal. He knew that being sick, it doesn't let you eat as much as you'd like, and he won the bet. Another remembrance I had of Dave was that he would spend time at the discos. We'd go to Big Daddy's, and we wouldn't try to pick up girls, and I wouldn't try to get a phone number. It was just more entertaining to sit next to this guy at the bar. He made me laugh. He was so entertaining. The talk was really hysterical at times. After Big Daddy's, when we got no phone number, we would walk back to the car, which he called Loser's Alley. The way back to the car was down Loser's Alley because there'd be no phone number. Then we'd go to Mr. D's coffee shop and we'd be talking there. One time I was at Mr. D's with him and I was trying to talk about a movie that I saw a bunch of times, and I'd get teary-eyed just talking about it. It was a sad story. It was Buster and Billy. And he saw me getting teared up, and he'd say real loud in the coffee shop, are you crying? One of the conversations that we had at Mr. D's was, he was telling me the happiest day in his life was the day he got out of the psych ward. Yeah, he had bipolar or unipolar depression, and he took lithium for that. As long as he took the medication, he had it under control. If he ever forgot to take the medication, he would get pretty crazy. One night we were in Westwood Village. My girlfriend at the time and Dave and I went to Hamburger Hamlet for dinner. I put my name in for a table. We're sitting there waiting for my name to be called. I hear my name and somebody else takes the table. So I started hassling with the hostess. Some guy got involved. I told him to mind his own business. It escalated. He said, "You want to step outside?" So he walks out the door. I walk out the door. I look behind me and Dave is still sitting there. He hadn't budged a muscle. I came back in. The guy followed me back in. I wound up sitting right next to him, waiting for a new table. Somewhere there's an unwritten rule that if a friend of yours is going out to get into a fight, you don't just sit there, you follow him out, right? So I'm thinking, what's the use in hanging out with a 7-foot tall friend if he's not going to have your back? But I think Dave knew something I didn't, because it would have been pretty hard to enjoy that meal with a fat lip or a sore jaw. He knew he was adopted when he was living at home with his mother. She would call him idiot. That was her affectionate term of endearment that she had for her son. "Hey, idiot, you're going to call me before you come home?" You know, she'd call him idiot. Well, one time Dave was waiting for his mother to type a letter, and she was typing like this. You've got to remember, Dave was tall. He sneaked up behind her and went, "Ooh!" Just scared the living crap out of her. It was also very funny. One thing I learned about Dave was that he was a member of the Tip Toppers Club. I was surprised to learn this. He didn't attend regular meetings, but I went with him one time when they had a beauty contest. They had a bathing suit competition and all the contestants were wearing high heels. To belong to the Tip Toppers, men would have to be 6'4", women 6 feet. But in heels, they were at least 6'3" or 6'4". So I was sitting up close during the beauty contest, and I think the contestants thought I was one of the judges because they were on the runway and they were looking at me, smiling, looking right at me the whole time. So they thought I was one of the judges. Afterwards, there was a dance, and I was dancing with some of these tall girls, and really some of them were beautiful, actually beautiful. Well, a strange experience. When they all come onto the dance floor, you could feel the floor tremble, and then it would get very dark. They were all out there on the dance floor, and they would block the lights, so the lighting became very dim. Dave dated one of the girls from the Tip Toppers. He called her Kayla the Wayla. He also told me that during one of their makeout sessions, it got really hot and heavy, and he was afraid. He was really worried that the friction of the polyester pants and the dress material of hers was going to start a fire. Another remembrance of Dave was he would walk through a doorway and his cigarette would always set off the smoke alarm. I was with him one time when that happened. He also told me that a consideration being 7 feet tall is that you have to be extremely careful walking under ceiling fans. When Dave was riding in my car, he'd push in the cigarette lighter to light a smoke. When he'd hear it pop out, he'd reach out and he'd pull out my radio knob. That happened more than once. Dave was a real sports fan. I knew next to nothing about sports, but I went with him one time to a Rams game, more than once, I think went two or three times, to a Rams game and a basketball game. When the players came out onto the field, Dave got a real hearty laugh out of my only comment. I didn't know what to say. And I said, "Those guys are huge." When we were watching the basketball game, we were sitting up in the one of the last rows up the top, right next to Jerry Buss. He had a skybox and we were sitting right next to him. Dave used to play tennis with the owner of Steg's. What a surprise. Dave told me that he enjoyed seeing the owner, Harley, run back and forth across the court. He'd keep him running back and forth. I never played tennis with Dave, but we did play ping pong. And I've got to tell you that I couldn't return his serve. He put the spin on that ball, it would come flying across and hit the table and go off in a different direction. I don't think I was ever able to return one of his serves. But when it was my turn to serve, we'd have a little volley going, and then pretty soon, from where Dave was standing behind the ping pong table, it seemed like he could reach all the way across the net, and he would smash that ball, and that was it. I couldn't learn, I couldn't progress, and I couldn't enjoy a game of ping pong with my friend Dave. We would go to the movies. At this time I got to know Dave pretty well. He had a laugh. Sometimes he'd laugh so hard at the movies that it was embarrassing, but he would always, give me an elbow in the ribs sitting next to him, right next to him. He'd lift my arm up with his elbow. Well, that became a little irritating, so I'd move a seat down. So then he would hit me with his fist. I get an elbow, I get a fist in the stomach if I wasn't sitting right next to him. So besides the $1 movies at the UA, he would also like to go to the Pussycat Theater in Torrance. At the time it was soft porn, and then later became hard porn. But he'd always want to go to the Pussycat. Hey Randy, Pussycat? So he would talk me into it. But one thing he didn't have to talk me into, he didn't have to twist my arm, but he'd say Ponderosa, the Ponderosa restaurant in Culver City. I love that restaurant. I would always give Dave my tapioca pudding. All the meals came with tapioca pudding, and I would give that to Dave. So when it came to the Ponderosa, he didn't have to twist my arm. One time on a drive, we went to the Murrieta Hot Springs golf course. He wanted to play nine holes of golf. I decided I'd just stay in the car and listen to the country music top 20 countdown. I didn't want to miss that. So while I was listening to the country music countdown, he went out and played 9 holes of golf. But he didn't have to pay for it because there had been a fire at the golf clubhouse. We planned a second Yosemite trip in 1979. These were when the sad times began. I didn't know it. We never should have gone on that trip. But Dave was engaged to be married. His fiancée stood him up at the altar, and he stopped taking his medicine. He got beaten up at the bar. About 2 or 3 guys jumped him at the bar. So when he came out to the car to go to Yosemite, I looked at him, and his face was bloody. He had scabs. He had a bloody lip with scabs all around it. We never should have gone on that trip. He was in terrible shape. Really, really terrible shape. He couldn't stop talking about the girl standing him up at the altar. And I couldn't stand it any longer, and I was yelling at him to shut up. It was just horrible. We were going to split the cost of that trip. When I got back to Curry Village, I looked at our campsite, and I could see fast food wrappers, candy wrappers all over the ground, and I knew he had spent the money that he was going to use to pay for half the trip on junk food, candy, drinks. We got back home. That was the last time I saw him for a while. I was on my way to work one time and I saw this car parked outside Caro's coffee shop. It used to be the Red Balloon on Hawthorne Boulevard. I think it was called Caro's. So I still had a little bit of time, so I walked in there in the morning on my way to work and sat at the table. And he was in real bad shape. He was in bad shape. He asked me, how long are you going to work that piddly-ass job of yours? And I said, you know, Dave, some of us do have to work for a living. That set him off. He called me a mother effer. I paid for my coffee and I walked out. The waitress said, what did you do? Did you get him upset? Well, that's the last time I saw Dave. I heard later that he stopped by Steg's again and he was asking about me. But as far as that was our last contact.